Welcome to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Sepult. I serve as the Economic Development Director for the City of Hutchinson. In this episode, we'll have our normal project updates, and then in the second segment, we're going to talk about some labor force trends that affect the county, and then also the state of manufacturing in our community. So let's do the project updates first. We're going to take these kind of from the north end of town going south. So on the very north end, on the former Burns Manor site, there's a new apartment complex that's going to get built. It's called North Maple Apartments. And the ultimate plan is for 3 buildings to get built. What's going to happen is that 2 of them are going to get built this summer, and both of those will be 44 units. And this project's probably going to kick off in April and May, so it won't be very long at all until we're seeing some activity up there. Moving over to the landing, this project is rolling ahead very rapidly. They're at a point now where all the windows have been put into the building, and you can see the white building wrap is on it all the way around. And they have contractors on site right now doing the roofing and doing the electrical work and so forth. So it's moving pretty quickly. I believe it'll be May, perhaps, when the city comes in and they'll construct a stormwater pond on the northwest corner of the site. So that'll be probably the next big thing. Here's a view of the building from Girl Scout Park, looking west. And then here's a view on the west side looking across, kind of looking southeast. So Dairy Queen would be behind it. And then here's the west edge of the building. This is where you will drive in for the garages. So I think siding will be going up here pretty quick, and we'll start seeing what this building looks like when it's a finished product, probably sooner rather than later. Then just kitty corner across from this, we have the Dairy Queen. There's a pretty substantial remodel going on inside and out. So there's going to be new signage at the Dairy Queen, new windows, and then above the windows they have what are called eyebrows they put over it. It's a feature, so those are going to get added. And then there'll be a tower, sort of a tower, on the northeast corner of the building. And then I'm pretty sure there's going to be a giant plastic spoon that gets attached to this thing too. So it's going to look quite a bit different here when it's all said and done. Then we look just down the street from that, going east, the old family video store, that's getting a cannabis retailer is going to be going into that. I don't know quite the timing, but I'm imagining probably sometime this summer. Then we go the other way, south on Main Street a little bit to the Hotel Jorgensen. This one is scheduled now for April demolition, so probably the second half of the month. Where we stand right now is that all the hazardous materials have been removed from the site, and we're just waiting for what's called a high-reach demolition excavator. Special machine, got the picture of it there for you. So we just have to kind of get in line until one of these is available. And that, I'm told, will be after the middle of the month. And then once demolition begins, it's probably a 4 to 6 week process from start to finish, and then that will involve street and lane closures as well. So what's going to happen is that Washington Avenue on the north side of the building is going to be closed altogether on the east end. The alley behind the hotel will be closed, and then the parking area and then the first lane closest to the hotel will be closed off as well. So there'll be traffic cones, and then people will have to kind of make a movement when they're going up and down Highway 15 to kind of maneuver around that. And then the contractor is going to be putting up some pretty tall fencing around the whole thing too to keep everyone safe. So end of April, this will get going. Another news item is that we have a Thai restaurant coming in where the Zella's restaurant used to be. So I have already talked with representatives of the owner, and they're telling me late spring, summer is when they plan to open this. So this is going to come pretty quick. Another project that the city is working on, and this is not by any means a done deal, it's just a project that we're looking at, is to create an event space on First Avenue Southeast next to Library Square. So this is just going to be a pedestrian-friendly gathering space a place to have community events and so forth. So right now we're having the engineering work done to design the poles and the lights that are going to go across the street. So the idea is that we're going to have lights from Main Street all the way back to Hassan that will zigzag across the street for the entire length. So that's just going to kind of help create sort of a space to do community events. So right now it's just a proposal. We've talked about it quite a lot. We don't have the funding lined up for it yet. So there's some bridges to cross, but at least this is being talked about. And I think a lot of people are excited about it. Looking at the River House, there's a project going on right now, and probably be done in a couple weeks here to put siding on the south side of that building. So that's going to get tuned up a little bit, and we're excited to see how that's going to turn out. Then another project, this is coming probably next year, is to put new signage in downtown next to all of our public parking lots. This is just to help people find the parking lots better. So this one, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a 2027 project, but it is in the pipeline. Pretty sure this one's going to happen. I mentioned this one before, but Guiding Light Child Care Center, that's open for business. So they have slots available. They're enrolling children, preschool age and school age. So the number's there on the screen. So if you're looking for child care or know anyone else that is, by all means, give them a call. Another item I can hint at, can't really talk about too much, but there is a new retailer that's going to be coming in at Hutchinson Shopping Mall. It's not clothing, it's more of a general products, I guess is what I would say. And this one will be coming out here, I hope in the next few months we'll be able to get the name out. Just wanted to let you know that there is something happening there at the mall. Then at the Hutchinson Enterprise Center out in the industrial park, we have a new company coming in. I think last episode I was saying I had 8,000 square feet available. Today I have nothing available. The building is theoretically filled up. We have to bring this to City Council here in a couple weeks to get final approval, but I'm optimistic that this will happen. And then at that point, the Enterprise Center will be full 100%. So as soon as I'm able to share the information, I'll give you the full update. So that's what's going on around town. Quite a lot of stuff. If you have questions, certainly feel free to give me a call anytime. My number there on the screen. I'll be happy to chat with you, answer any questions that you might have. In our next segment, we're going to talk about some labor force trends in the county and in Hutchinson, and then kind of the state of manufacturing in the community. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppold. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. In this section, we're going to talk about some labor force trends in manufacturing. So we're going to kind of geek out a little bit on some numbers here. So let's take a look and see what's going on. This is a graph that shows the Hutchinson economy. And we've actually kind of reached a historical milestone here because just in the last few months, manufacturing has dropped off. It used to be the #1 biggest employer in Hutchinson, and it was that way for decades. And now it's not. Now it's #2. Education and health services, that's where most people are employed in Hutchinson nowadays, a little bit more than 2,000 people. And that makes sense because you have the school district, you have Ridgewater College, you have Hutchinson Health, and so forth. So there's quite a lot of education and health services in our community. Then #2 is manufacturing. So that's still a big slice of the pie, but it's not #1 anymore. Probably about 1,800 people employed in that area, I would say. And then third is just retail trade. It's called trade, transportation, and utilities. Mostly that's just our big retailers. That's Target, it's Walmart, it's Menards, it's things like that, Ace Hardware, and so forth. Even so, manufacturing in Hutchinson, it accounts for about a quarter of all the jobs in our community. Now, this has been declining over the years. You know, in 2019, we had nearly 32%, almost a third of everyone that had a job was working in manufacturing. So we've dropped from a third to a quarter. And this is a trend that's been going on a long time. Even still, manufacturing or Hutchinson as a town, still very dominant in manufacturing. We're way above national average, state average. We have more manufacturing in Hutchinson than almost any other town in Minnesota on a per capita basis. So you can see on the chart there, 24.5% of all people that have a job are employed in manufacturing. You compare that to the center bar, that's the state of Minnesota, 10.7% are employed in manufacturing. And we are a little bit of a manufacturing state. And then nationally, about 9.7% of people are employed in manufacturing. So this has been a trend going on for many decades that manufacturing has been in decline. And this is just part of the natural evolution that economies undergo over time. They all start off as an agrarian economy, you know, farms and crop production and all that stuff. Once upon a time, that was by far the most dominant occupation in America. And then following World War II and really through the 20th century, manufacturing became the dominant sector in our economy. And then now our economy continues to evolve so that today it's primarily a service economy. That's where most of the jobs are nationwide. And then as a result, manufacturing has trailed off. Agriculture as an employer has trailed off. And again, there's no, real overall cause of this. This is just the way that economies evolve over time. So nothing new under the sun. It's just kind of the way things go. Here in Hutchinson, we have seen some decline in manufacturing employment. There was a time when, close to half of the people in Hutchinson were employed in manufacturing. And so you can see there in the chart, in 2010, manufacturing employment was over 3,000 in this town. And today I believe it's about 1,800, 1,860 or so. So it's gone down quite a bit. Now, most of our manufacturers are actually doing very well. And a lot of them are adding jobs. Even now they're adding jobs. I think over half of our manufacturing companies are looking for help right now. The decline, really, we can attribute that to a couple big companies that declined over time. Hutchinson Technology, for example, back in the 1990s, there was 3,800 people that worked on that campus all by itself. And that has gone down over the years. The company has moved some operations overseas, and just general changes have caused it to decline over time. So here in Hutchinson Technology today, I think employs less than 100. So that's a big chunk of that drop that you see on this graph. And then Hutchinson Manufacturing, of course, once upon a time, I think it was 160 people worked there. Today that company is gone. So just those two account for pretty much everything you're seeing there in terms of decline. So manufacturing employment is down about over 40% in Hutchinson since 2010. So interesting. At the same time, our labor force is held basically steady. It hasn't really changed that much. Since 2010, we've gained about 200 workers in Hutchinson, and that's not very much. It's only 2.8% gain. So we're not really gaining on the labor side, and that contributes to the fact that we have an ongoing labor shortage in our community. Another interesting item is that here in McLeod County, we actually export a pretty good chunk of our workforce. So here's a map of the county, and I'll explain this. There's three pieces to it. In the middle, there's a circle, an arrow that goes in a circle. So that represents the people that live in McLeod County and they work in McLeod County. So that's about 7,400, almost 7,500 workers live here and they work here. And then the arrow on the left, that is people that live outside of McLeod County, but then they come into McLeod County to work. And I know, for example, 3M, a lot of people work outside of, they're from outside the county, they come here to work at 3M. So that would be about 6,300 workers that are coming into the county every workday. And then the arrow on the right, That represents the workers that live in McLeod County, but then they go outside the county to go to work. So that's about 8,500 people there. So you do the math, you add in the workers that we have that live here and work here, add in the workers that come into work, and then subtract out the workers that are leaving the county for work. On a net basis, we're exporting about 5,200 workers every workday. And the vast majority of those folks are going to the western suburbs of the Twin Cities to have jobs over there. So, and that could be related to incomes. I'm not totally sure what the thought process is there, but there is a substantial number of workers that leave the county for work every day. On this chart now, this shows annual changes in our labor force from 1990 to 2024. And so it's kind of divided by decade. The green bars there on the left, that's the decade of the 1990s. And that was a pretty good decade overall for labor force because we were gaining about 233 people every year in the county for a workforce. So that was good. And then you can see from the bars there that that kind of flipped over. So then you go to the decade of the 2000s, that's the red bars. During that whole decade, McLeod County gained one person per year in labor force. So I mean, labor force growth basically stopped. Then we go to the right again, the gold bars, and you can see there that now we're starting to lose labor force. And during the decade of the 2010s, we lost an average of about 35 workers in the county every year. And the real capper to that was the year 2020. That's represented here by a red bar, but that shows that was the effects of the pandemic. So we had a lot of people who were very close to retirement, maybe a year or two from retirement, and they had a lot of equity built up in their house. And I think a lot of them just decided, hey, close enough, I'm going to retire. I'm going to call it a career. So we lost a big chunk of the workforce in that year due to the pandemic. Then finally, the bars on the right, the three bars, that's the decade of the 2020s. So there we're starting to see a little bit of a turnaround, but we still have to wait and see how this kind of shakes out because there's bigger things going on. The baby boom generation is retiring. And that's going to really adversely affect our workforce here, I think, for some time to come. So here we have what's called a population pyramid. And I'll explain this to you. So on the left-hand side, the kind of purple bars, that's what the population of the county looked like in the year 2000. And each bar basically represents a 10-year period in the age of the worker. So that first bar on the top, for example, that's all the people that are 5 years old and younger. So in the year 2000, we had about 2,400 in that category. The next bar below that, that's the age group of 5 to 14 years. And in the year 2000, we had about 5,500 people in that category, and so on and so forth. And then the gold bars on the right, that's the 2024 estimate of what the population looks like in the county. And I'm going to show you some pretty interesting changes here. So one of the things that is an interesting issue that's out there and a real challenge for our school system is that we've got fewer kids coming into school. And if you just compare that very top bar on the left, you know, in the year 2000, we had 2,400 kids in that 5 years and younger category. In 2024, it's only 1,995 or so. So there's 400, a little bit more than 400 fewer kids. And then you start expanding that out. You go to the next age group, that 5 to 14, and there's a lot fewer kids going into our schools in 2024 than there was in 2000. And that's a huge challenge for the community and for our school system because the state of Minnesota, they provide about $10,000 per kid that goes to the public school. So if you take out 824 kids, that represents over $8 million that the schools don't have anymore. And so you can see that creates some real challenges on the budget for our school system. So that's an item to be worked on. Another interesting thing here is that our baby boom generation is retiring, and I think it's by 2029 they will have all hit retirement age. So on this chart you can see I put a red box around a group of workers, 5,000, or a group of population, 54 and 94 in the year 2000. That was the age group 35 to 44 years old, so kind of right in the middle of your working years. And then you advance that 20 years. We're going to go to the right side, and that same group of people, that 54 and 94, they're 20 years older. So now they're in the 55 to 64 year age group. That's where the big bulge is in the population in our county. Now, the really challenging, interesting thing about that is 55 to 64, that's a big group of people that are looking at retirement in the not too distant future. And it won't be long before they are walking out from their job, theoretically for the last time to enjoy a happy retirement. But the problem is we don't have enough people coming in behind them to replace them. And so we have an ongoing workforce shortage today, and it's going to continue for the next number of years. It's just going to get more challenging. There's just not enough bodies to fill all the jobs that we have. This is a big challenge for us. One question that comes up, because the Hutchinson Economic Development Authority, we put a lot of stress on manufacturing. We emphasize manufacturing. And this is really the reason why, is that manufacturing, it provides the highest average weekly wages. That's really where the money is to be made. The average weekly wage in the manufacturing sector is about $1,575 a week on average, and that's higher than any other sector of our local economy. And this is true statewide and nationwide. Manufacturing jobs really pay. And that's been very good for our community, because here's a ranking of median household income. If you looked at the 19 regional centers across Minnesota, Hutchinson is ranked 5th highest out of that group in terms of median household income. So we're actually comparatively relatively prosperous in our community compared to a lot of other ones in outstate Minnesota. So good for us. And that's what manufacturing does for us. And then at the same time, we are quite low, very low percentage of the population below the poverty level. So out of the 19 regional centers, Hutchinson ranks 3rd lowest in terms of population below the poverty level. So that's really good. The state average 9.3%, we're at 7.9%. So we're doing pretty darn good here in Hutchinson, and I think it shows as you look at the community. A big reason that we emphasize manufacturing is that manufacturing is very much the engine that pulls our local economy. We have other types of businesses. We have service businesses like attorneys or accountants or insurance, things like that. And then we also have retail businesses like the hardware store or the pizza place or the movie theater. And what really happens is that those service businesses and the retail businesses, what makes them successful is demand, right? It is demand for their goods and services that allow those businesses to do well. And so the way that we create the demand is by creating high-paying manufacturing jobs. And the more high-paying manufacturing jobs we can create, the more demand is created for goods and services that our service businesses and our retail businesses provide. So the best thing that we can do as an economic development authority is to create these high-paying jobs, as many as we can, because that's going to create the demand for service businesses and retail businesses to be successful. That's how we help them. So just to kind of sum up, manufacturing in Hutchinson, it's about 25% of all the jobs in the whole town. They are typically the highest paying jobs, and then they create the demand for service businesses and retail businesses to be successful. Key challenges, number one on my list all the time is we have a shortage of workforce. We just don't have enough people going into manufacturing type jobs. For every 90 workers that we have in Hutchinson, we have 100 jobs open. And even today, 100 to 150 job openings, we don't even have a body to fill these jobs. And it's not just, that's just the manufacturing side. That doesn't even look at medical. It does not look at the trades, electricians or plumbers or heating and ventilation specialists or carpenters. Huge need in those areas too. So just a huge, huge shortage of workforce. And then kind of companion with that, we have childcare shortage, housing shortage. Those are issues that we'll talk about in upcoming episodes, but we have significant things that we need to be working on. Well, that is about it for this episode. If you have questions about anything or would like to learn more, I'd be happy to chat with you. Give me a call anytime, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. So that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in to Hutchinson Economic Developments, and we'll see you next time.